Stop chasing followers, start generating clients. I am super excited about today's episode. I have a guest who has been coaching me. She doesn't really know it, but she's been coaching me. I joined her podcast a week or so ago and got some free coaching, which I've been using. And I'm just going to read a little bit to you guys, and then we'll bring our guest in. So, a social media coach builds your audience and brand for influence, but business growth takes more than likes. Our guest doesn't teach you to go viral. She teaches you to turn social media into a revenue generating machine filled with real qualified clients. Who doesn't need that? Who doesn't want that? And guys, I am super excited to bring Michelle Berman-Mikel into the podcast. Welcome to Loan Officer Life, Michelle.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you and I did an episode of your podcast a week or so ago, and we've been on a couple of these, screen conversations. We've yet to meet in real life. That's going to happen sooner than later. And every time we get together, I think one of the things we always say is, I can't believe we haven't met in real life. I can't believe we haven't connected sooner, because we have a lot of the same connections. We're running in a lot of the same places, and you and I are really focused on helping the same audience, right? The loan officers that are out there. We're doing things a little bit different in how we help, but I think it all comes together really beautifully. So thanks again for joining, and I'm excited to get into this conversation.
Yeah, me too. I think on one hand, we can say, wow, how did we not know each other all this time? And then I think on the other hand, God's timing is perfect. And I think we came into each other's life at a good time. There's a lot of things that I feel like you've been doing for a long time that I didn't even know or have the wherewithal to understand. And I think obviously that goes both ways.
Yeah.
So I've learned a ton from you, even if you don't know it, probably as much as you've learned from me. And I think that's just the beautiful thing of new friendships. But I also think it goes to showing how powerful leverage really can be, which is a lot of what we'll talk about. But leverage is my favorite word in the English dictionary, because it really is how you grow your company. It's how you grow your business. It's how you build a pipeline. It's how you do anything these days, right? And so social, your ability to do well with social is through, or essentially how good you are at being able to create leverage, but doing it really authentically. And I'm sure we'll talk about there's a lot of shitty ways to do it, and we don't want to be those people.
Right on. Well, my audience may not know you as well as they should. So I always want to start with letting them get to know you a little bit, because you've got a really interesting background, which I think speaks to, why you're such a great resource for the teaching and coaching you do. Tell us about your background. And even this past weekend, we traded texts. I think, did like some crazy 10 or 14 mile run, and your husband was doing a race. And give us an idea of who you are and kind of how you came to be into this space.
Yeah, I would love to. And I love that we were texting over the weekend. That was awesome. For multiple reasons. And I got a good laugh out of it, which I can tell you why. So for those of you guys that don't know me, as Brian said, my name is Michelle Berman-Mikel. I've been in this world for about 10 years. So I started my company in 2014, back when Instagram was really, really new. Instagram was a very unused platform. Most people hadn't even figured out what an algorithm was. Like, it was a very, very new conversation. And prior to that, my young life, if you will, was a competitive swimmer for about 20 years. Swam all through college, swam for Rutgers for all my East Coast people on a small scholarship there, swam all 4 years, graduated, ended up at Kent State for my master's program, and actually did not finish my master's. So technically I have everything credit-wise done except for my 40-hour thesis. So I did literally all of it except for that. And the funny part about it that I can laugh about now is I didn't do the 40-hour thesis because it just didn't feel right to me. And now, instead of having to have paid to do it, I now get paid to do it. So it's kind of a funny story. So I've been an athlete my entire life. I grew up swimming from the age of 4 all the way through 22 when I graduated from college. And swimming was, and still is to this day, truly, I think, the best thing that's ever happened to me. And it's translated so well into my adult life and into my entrepreneurial life, especially. But after retiring from swimming, I became a competitive CrossFitter. So I swam all the way through 2022, started CrossFit in 2023. And I actually started CrossFit on accident the day that I found out my dad had been diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And there's some story to that too, but I can tell you it was the caveat that really changed my life, because I decided at that moment that I was going to take control of where my life was going, and I hadn't up to that point. And then fast forward to CrossFit, I competed all the way through 2018, retired in October of 2018 when the CrossFit community shifted and the world of CrossFit changed. And then I decided I was going to try something new. So I tried Olympic weightlifting, which is, if anyone's familiar with it, it's just the barbell aspect of CrossFit. So just the squat, clean and jerk, and just the snatch. So lots of squatting, lots of deadlifts, lots of like powerlifting type movements combined with the Olympic weightlifting movements. And it was there where I met my husband. And the story goes like this. I saw him for the first time, texted my best friend at the time, and I said, I just met my husband, and she about killed me. And she was like, absolutely not. No way. I'm not going to allow it. And it was this whole really funny thing. But I told her, I said, I'm dead serious. Like, I just met my husband. And fast forward, we got married 2 months to the day after our first date. And we've been married 6.5 years. We have a 3.5-year-old named Knox. And I'd be lying if I said, it was the perfect first year of marriage, because that's not true. When you get married in 2 months, there's some things that have to, like, think about how long you date someone for, right? We were already married, trying to figure all that out. But I think that, God had a hand in all of that, and God knew I needed Dave, and I'm really honored and grateful to be his wife. And fast forward to now, 2025, I run a very successful coaching company for mortgage and real estate professionals. I teach them how to understand the power of leverage. And more importantly, I'm a mom and a wife and someone who just really, really enjoys life now, which I can't always say I did. It's fun.
So you talk about leverage, and when we were on your podcast, we talked a lot about leverage, and that was the first time I actually ever thought about that term relative to social. And I've had a chance to kind of think about the term and what the term means in all kinds of different contexts, but really specifically as it relates to social. And you also talk about, when we were on your podcast, we talked about social selling, which I never think that's what I'm doing, but it is. And when for me, when I kind of put it all together and I think about, being on social, I'm not, the Instagram and Facebook, I'm on those platforms, but it's just not where I create content and spend a lot of time. I spend most of my time on LinkedIn. But since we talked and you introduced me to this concept of leverage and how it relates to social selling, it's changed really how I think about every time I'm on the platform. And so I'd love to kind of break that down and start there, because I think everybody that's tuning into this episode is trying to figure out how to build leverage in their business and in their life.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, leverage is my favorite thing to talk about. As I mentioned, it's my favorite word in the English dictionary. And I don't know what the true Webster definition is, because I just don't care, right? Like, my definition of the word leverage is your ability to build a bridge between someone you already have a relationship with to get to somebody that you don't. And, when I first said, or when I would first answer the question of, hey, what do you do for a living, Michelle? I had a really hard time answering the question, because I don't do what a lot of people think I do when I say I own a social media company. And that is a good thing and a bad thing, right? Because it's about how you articulate it. So I am not a social media coach. I'm a social media prospecting coach. They are very, very, very different. And with that being said, where does leverage come into play? So if I look at my career, right, in 2014 to up until today, there was these natural things that I started noticing throughout those 10 years, where I was like, okay, well, I don't go viral, right? Like, I'm not the person that's ever going to go viral. I don't have content that gets hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of likes every day. I don't get thousands and thousands of views on my content. But what do I get? Interesting to think about, right? And it was in 2018 when I really saw the writing on the wall for me. And I know we'll talk about this, I'm sure, later on, but I'm in the middle of writing a book right now. I'm actually holding half of it in front of me here, sitting on my desk while I'm doing this. But the idea is, in 2014, when I had started all of this, I didn't know what I was doing. I was literally failing forward every single day. It was just this uphill battle of, I don't really understand. But I had to get clients, I had to pay my bills, so I had to figure all this stuff out. So I just failed forward enough. And then in 2018, I was like, excuse my French, I hope I can say this, but I was like, oh my gosh, holy shit, I figured it out. And what it was I had created a black line essentially, or this roadmap to success. And 100% of it was built off of my ability to utilize the eyeballs that I had already gotten and just start a conversation with them. And in turn, I got better at making better content. I got better at figuring out how to articulate what it is that I do in my content. And I started really seeing that the power in me was my ability to build a relationship with someone that I didn't know, because I had created one with someone and built a good, honest, trustworthy relationship with, right? If I were to ask you, Brian, for an introduction, I doubt you would say no. But
Right.
why? Right? Why? Because I really, really focus on all of the relationships individually, genuinely. Like, I really care about these people because it's not this whole, competition situation. I think it's very collaborative. I think social should be. But long story short, when I built Beyond the Method, which is the name of my program, I said to myself, I said, I'm not going to teach you how to go viral, because I don't. I'm being true to who I am. And I don't do those things, right? Learning how to build a reel and make a reel, I still stumble through it today, right? But what have I figured out? What have I mastered? And the answer to that is my content speaks to who I am as a human being very authentically. I did an in-person speaking gig about a week ago, and in the room, I asked them to go look at my Instagram, and I said, I want you guys to tell me a feeling word when you look at my account. So everyone, gets their phones out and they're looking at it. And a lady in the middle of the room, she raises her hand and she says, Michelle, I got to tell you, you feel like you're my friend already. And I about cried. Like, what
Yeah.
an amazing way to start a relationship with someone when they already feel like they're my friend and we've never met. Right? So that is what I understood about my content, is I had to make people feel very connected to me. And then you and I talked about on my podcast, right? We have to earn the right to talk about mortgages.
Yeah.
I have to earn the right to talk about what I do for a living so that someone can know, hey, Michelle's available for hire. But I don't start with that, right? So I figured out what I was really good at doing, and it was building bridges and creating relationships in my DMs. And then I reverse engineered that process into, okay, if that's the result, this is what's happening. I'm building these really good relationships and I'm getting opportunities. How do I reverse engineer that to what do I have to post on my Instagram so that I start to also get more inbound opportunities, as opposed to just having to proactively go seek them? Right. So you combine those two things, and the master primary skill for me being reverse engineering, you have a winning combination of, I now have clients and students in 47 states. This is the busiest year of speaking for me that I'll ever have so far. And I'm writing a freaking book. Like, that's
Yeah.
so crazy to me. So it's just cool.
I want to get to the book in a minute, but you you said something. It was the way you said it when you talked about my content, right? You talked about your content.
Yep.
And I think one of the things that I observe with what you put out there, which is different than a lot of people, is, and especially when I know the person and then I see the content, there's a lot of people, and I hope I don't fall into this now that I'm saying this, but there's a lot of people that their content isn't really them. It's almost like it's a caricature of them.
Mm. True.
And based on what I see with what you put out, and are limited, but we've had some pretty deep conversations. I would say I feel like, similar to the audience member that said they feel like you're their friend, I feel like we've built that based on what I've been able to learn about you from your content. So I'm guessing this is part of what you work on with your clients, your students. I'm not sure what you how you term them,
Same,
your
same.
peeps, your
Yeah.
peeps. But I think authenticity is, my radar goes up when I see people that I know them personally, and then I see the stuff that they say and put out, and it just doesn't align. So how do you coach that up with folks?
Great question. And the answer is you have to find a way to pull it out of them, because some of these people have been trained to not do that. Right. If you think about back in the day, I'm aging myself, or maybe making myself sound young. It depends on how you want to look at that. But back when you really started hearing this term of mortgage marketing, or what does my social marketing look like? People were taught very clearly to have this professional presence and then to have this personal presence. And
Mhm.
they were these two very separate things. And, back in 2014, really up to about 2016, 17 ish. Yeah, that was the game, even my game, right? Like if you look at my Instagram and you scroll back far enough, you're going to have to go way back. You'll see the templates, you'll see the cookie cutter vibes of the
Mhm.
in-house marketing stuff and the quote graphics and all that stuff, because that is how we were taught in the beginning. And there's no fault to anybody if that's how you were taught, because that's just how it was. But what we really discovered, and what I truly discovered, is that when I figured out a way to connect with someone, the first thing that they would ask for me, or like if I sent a message to somebody, the first thing they would ask of me is, well, tell me about yourself, right? Or who do you know that, like, or who recommended you to me? So I started picking up on all of these little radar moments as I was doing
Yeah.
it. And I'm thinking, well, if Brian has to ask me who recommended him to me, then I did it wrong. I sent the message wrong, right? So I started figuring all of that out over this time frame, and I said, okay, well, now I have to coach my clients on how to send better messages, which means that I have to coach them on how to look at the person that they want to send a message to and really find a way to connect with them first, right? Which then mean, if I'm reverse engineering that one more time, which then means that my content has to speak to that thing, because am I who I say I am in that message? So the first thing you're going to do, Brian, when I send you a message, when you don't know who I am, is I'm going to say, hey, so and so recommended I reach out to you. I saw that you were doing this or that. I would love to connect with you and see if there's some synergy between the two of us, right? First thing you're going to do is you're going to click on my profile and be like, who the heck is this, right? So in order to win that conversation with you, my content has to be exactly who I say I am. It has to showcase those personal sides of what I just articulated to you, right? Because likely when I looked at your content before I sent you a message, I tried in my brain to find this synergy between the two of us, wherever it was, whether it's about running, whether it's about horses, whether it's about coffee, whether it's about whatever it is, right? I have to find that and I have to bring that up in that initial message to you while also name dropping. So those two things come together, which then leads you to look at my profile. So if there's nothing about any of those things on my profiles anywhere, you're going to say, is she who she says she is?
Right.
So again, it's this big giant reverse engineer play, which is a big part of how I coach, because I think people want to put the cart before the horse, right? First thing they'll say to me, Michelle, you're a social media prospecting coach, so teach me how to get leads. Nope, that's not how. We can't start there, right? Because if your content sucks, it doesn't matter how good you are at prospecting or how good you are at sending messages to people you don't know, because if your content's that bad, nobody's going to look at it anyway, and it's not going to further the conversation in the sense of, it's not going to confirm to me that you are who you say you are.
Yeah, that is there. I think the message in that is there is no shortcut,
Nope.
right? The shortcut is you. You literally are the shortcut, because if we were all starting from the place that you started from back in 2014, we would have to learn before we could do the reverse engineering. So, and I think one of your superpowers is to take all of your learnings and accelerate someone's starting point.
Mm-hmm.
And I say starting point intentionally, because too many people want to skip the starting point and get right to the lead flow, as you said, right? So I look at what you do and what others do in any kind of coaching as is fast tracking, the place to where you can start before you can get to success, which is not too different than from what you probably went through with the coaches that coached you as you were a young child all the way into college in swimming, right? You weren't getting coached by, hockey coaches or baseball coaches. You were getting coached by experts in swimming, and they were allowing you to kind of get the cheat code to get to a place where you could build on and have success.
100%. 100%. And I'm sure you're going to the somewhere with that. I don't want to jump the gun, but there's a
You
part.
give me too much credit, by the way.
Oh my gosh. Well, I was just going to say, I mean, I think, as someone who has been an athlete, I think I naturally can have this really unique bond with other athletes. And it doesn't have to be a swimmer, right? It can be anybody. Today, and in 2025, my husband is currently training to qualify for Boston. He's had several of his clients. He's a professional strength and conditioning coach and endurance or hybrid athlete coach. And it's been really cool to watch him and him to coach his clients. But the reality of it is, as a runner now, there's a lot of people that can resonate with that, right? And I watch the Paris Olympics, and when I watch the women's the women's marathon, it was so fascinating to me how similar a lot of the endurance stories were to mine as a swimmer. And I swam the mile. That was my event that I specialized in, which is the longest event in the swimming program. So there's something to that, right? But I just had this like natural bond with these running people who I've never met them, but I can understand likely where they're going or where they've been in their life because of how their stories were told. So there's something to that for sure. But it's, I think the other thing with coaching, and I'll just say this, everybody needs a coach. I have a coach, you have a coach, we all have coaches. But the reality is that not everyone's for everyone. And I think you have to find the person that really connects with you. And I'm a very regimented person. I'm a very disciplined person. I'm a very like structure oriented. I'm married to a Green Beret, guys. Like, come on, structure is like who we are. But structure, I think, is my superpower here when it comes to coaching because I've already designed the line, right? But what I can tell you is not every coach is for everybody. And you have to understand that you're going to have to interview people and find the person that's right for you. But I think you'll know when it's the right person because two people could say the exact same thing and one person could say it in a way that really resonates with you. And you're like, oh my gosh, where have you been? So.
And to me, a lot of people, especially in our industry, they look at coaching loan officers. I think it's a myth, but there's this myth that I can only coach loan officers if I've been a successful loan officer.
Yeah.
And I think there's coaching on different dimensions and different levels and for different outcomes. And, I think what you do specifically, yes, you happen to spend a lot of time in real estate and mortgage, but you could coach anybody in any industry, frankly, who wants to be relevant and impactful on social, right? Again, I'm not going anywhere with that, by the way. I'm like the ultimate amateur podcast host and interviewer because I go on tangents that people are like waiting for the hook and there's like no hook. I just wanted to get this out of my head so I can sleep tonight. I do want to though, I want to pivot to your book because I've got a little bit of insight or inside knowledge on what you're working on. The Black Line, right? Is The Black Line? Is that the working title?
This.
I know the answer, but let's share like the inspiration behind the title, and then let's get into what you're teaching in the book as you kind of put this together.
Yeah. So the Black Line for, if you've listened to this entire episode, you might know what the answer is already, but it is a play off the black line on the bottom of a pool. So the idea for me is I have created the path. I've built it. I've walked it. I have fallen on my face enough times and gotten back up enough times to where now I can successfully say, I'm running a very successful company and I am doing the darn thing, right? Like it's an everyday experience for me. And so the Black Line, which is the title of the book officially, is a way for people to understand what that journey really, really looks like. It's a bird's eye view into a lot of the philosophy and the mentality that it has taken for me to reverse engineer my life into my company, right? So when you think of who you are as a human being, there's all of these moments that happen throughout your life that create this human and really formulate like the type of person you are, the relationships you have, and the things that have happened in your life shape you in a way that are hard to describe or explain. And in 2000, and I'll share with you guys this, I had known I was going to write a book my entire adult life. For the most part, when I graduated from college, I knew without a shadow of a doubt that that's what I wanted to do. I never knew I wanted to be a speaker. That never was really part of it. But it kind of happened organically. I actually have a degree in journalism and media studies. It's a double major with psychology with the intent of I knew I wanted to write a book, but I knew that in order to do that, I had to understand how people operate. Right. So that was kind of the philosophy there. But when I put the book together, or how it really came together, where I had that aha light bulb moment of it's time now, because I had tried several times over the last few years and it just never worked. It just never clicked, and it felt like I was climbing Mount Everest with no training. And I was like, something is not right here. Like, it was almost like I was trying to force something that wasn't ready yet. And in September of last year, I did a webinar for a big mortgage company, and I had the owner of the company sent me a text message when I got off of the webinar. And he said to me, he said, Michelle, you have to write a book. That's it. And I said to him, I said, what? Like, I knew I wanted to, and yes, but like that, really that? And the opening slide of the presentation was a picture of a pool with the black line on the bottom of it. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, there it is. Like, I literally teach you how to stay as close to that black line on the bottom of a pool as possible, figuratively or analogy wise,
Yeah.
to get you from one end of the pool to the other side in the shortest distance possible, so that you can get to the other end, do a flip turn, turn around, and come back. And then eventually you will finish your race. So that's where the idea behind the black line came to be. Now, the rest of the book and kind of all of the symbolism and the stories and things, you guys will hopefully get to read it and see it. But there's some like visual analogies that I'm trying to create with hope. And I went through a lot of ups and downs in my life. Almost lost my dad to stage 4 cancer. I personally went through a suicidal phase for many years when I didn't have an identity outside of athletics. So that was also, or is also, a part of my story. And then most recently, my husband and I miscarried in November of last year, and he was working full time for corporate America still. And in the moment, I'm losing this baby, and I'm thinking, like, why is this happening to me? Like, we tried so hard, and it took us 14 months to get pregnant, and then to finally get pregnant, and then to lose the baby. And it was just like the most horrific 6 weeks of my life. But what I learned in it was that I am super resilient, and that if there's one thing I'm really good at doing, it's finding moments to say, thank you, God, for that, because there's something that comes out of it. And I think that as you guys read the book, hopefully, you'll start to see how all of these little moments in our life become caveats to that next step for us, right? Or what is that next step for us? And I'm really happy to report, I don't know when you're releasing this, but I'm really happy to report that we've officially retired my husband from corporate America, and he'll actually be home now full time building his private coaching company. And the silver lining of the miscarriage was that if I would have had that baby, unfortunately, my husband would not have had any PTO and would not have been able to be home and part of that. And that sucks, right?
Yeah.
So to be able to look at a very, very traumatic moment in my life and say, what is God doing in this right now, and how do I see it? It was really hard during the 6 weeks, but over the Christmas holiday, my husband and I really had that conversation, and it was so clear to us that God was moving in our life, and we just had to be open to seeing it. And we thought he was going to be working for corporate America still all the way for 2020 through all of 2025. And it's, today is April 17th. And my husband's last day of work for the Army is April 30th. Like, how incredible is that? And again, I think the book should bring hope. It should create change. I hope that other people feel like they see themselves in it. I hope that people understand that it's not as hard as they make it out to be, but that resiliency and grit is a big part of this story. And you have to be willing to do the hard things. And you also have to be willing to look at yourself and say, I messed that up.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
It's a lot of all of that, but to say I'm proud is an understatement. And I'm going through the editing process right now, and it's been quite a journey. You and I were laughing about that offline, but I made some mistakes even in my own editing. So it's just a journey, and I'm really excited to be on it. And I'm excited for other people to learn from my mistakes, but also to get to where they want to get and do it really fast.
So this will be one of those accountability moments for you. We're recording, as you said, on April 17th. We're going to publish this before the end of April. So before your husband retires from his corporate world job, what is your target date to release the book?
Yeah, so we are shooting for mid-June. I really initially wanted June 1st, but I will be speaking at Mastermind Summit in Vegas on June 24th and 5th. And so we're trying to time the release right around that to hope that we get some bestseller status situation right out of the gate. And I'm in the middle of, putting a big marketing plan around all of this so that people can hire and find out, what a keynote would look like and all of that kind of stuff. So we're just building some of the back end side of the marketing first. I'm in the middle of designing the inside and the cover and all of that. And so it's just a really fun, this is the fun part, I feel like, but we're trying to time the actual launch around when I'll be on a big stage there so that, we can get some oomph behind it.
I love that. And count me in for the promotional help when it's time to launch. I'm excited for you.
I appreciate that. Well, you'll get a signed copy, and I hope I get to hand it to you in person and give you a hug at the same time. That's how I want to do it. I don't know if you'll be at Mastermind Summit, but I hope.
It's now going to be on my list of things to strongly consider. It's on my soft circle, event to attend. So maybe now I have a real good reason to go, a better reason.
Well, and I won't give it too much away, but there is also another very big announcement happening at Mastermind Summit with me and another currently very quiet partner that will be a very public partner officially at Mastermind Summit. So
Well,
if you are not registered, come.
I love it. And we'll put links in the show notes for the summit. Obviously, we can't put a link yet for your book, but once it is published, I will do my role and make sure I'm promoting it as well. Michelle, how do people get a hold of you? What's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Well, honestly, the easiest is through social. So I'm on LinkedIn 24/7. That tab never gets closed now. Instagram is my favorite platform of choice. So you can message me there. And if you do so, just mention that you saw me or heard me with Brian. And I love getting to share that with the host of the podcast that I'm on, because they deserve to know that, right? That they're reaching people and creating impact. So Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook too. It doesn't really matter. Instagram is Berman-Mikel social. You guys want to type it in?
And we'll put links in the notes for everybody as well. Michelle, it's so great to have you on my podcast, and I again appreciate the friendship that we're building, and I look forward to that growing, but also finding ways where you and I can continue to collaborate and bring value to the loan officer community.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Brian. I appreciate it.
All right, y'all. See you, I guess, next week. We'll do this every Friday. So this episode will drop towards the end of April, and then we'll be back again the following week. So y'all have a great day. And again, Michelle, thank you so much for joining.
My pleasure.
All right.